We are really glad that you're able to join us today. We are super excited about this challenge, and we've got some excellent speakers, and it promises to be a really interesting hour or so. So when we get started, each speaker will share their thoughts on the challenge question. We'll then take questions from you lot in the audience. So if you'd like to ask us a question at the end, please use the reaction button to show a thumb, and then I'll pass across to you so you can ask your question. It'd be great if you can show us your video and your screen, and then unmute as well. If not, then we can take some in the chat bar. So just a reminder that this webinar is part of our Change Agents Autumn series ahead of running our challenge program in February. I should say that all students that have joined us today, I've got your email address, and I will send you a link as soon as possible for when the applications open, which will be early next month once we've finalised all of the challenge questions and finished with our webinar series. So now I'm going to give a quick run through of the speakers we've got to hear from this afternoon. And each speaker is going to kind of set their scene and where they're coming from for around like 5 to 10 minutes or so. At the end of that, then we'll be able to, as I say, throw the conversation open to you for some questions. So today we are going to hear from Tommy, Martin, Jos and Caroline. So Tommy McCormick is Development Manager at Scottish Music Industry Association, where he oversees their membership, works with industry partners to produce the Scottish Album of the Year Awards, and also provides business consultancy across the sector. So the Scottish Music Industry Association are also our challenge question sponsor next semester for this question. We're also joined by Dr. Martin Parker. He's the head of the Reid School of Music at Edinburgh College of Art. He is also a composer, improviser, and soloist with a laptop in his own right. Martin's work focuses on encounters between computers, people, and places. Really happy this afternoon to be joined by Jos Feijen. Jos is the director of the Effenaar, which is one of Holland's leading music venues, with over 300 concerts and 150,000 visitors a year. With an extensive advertising background, Jos is now developing the Effenaar as one of Europe's most innovative smart venues. And finally, we'll hear from Caroline Parkinson, who works at Edinburgh Innovations as a sector engagement manager in EFI, that's Edinburgh Futures Institute. Caroline recently published the Developing Data-Driven Innovation in the Creative Industries paper, which details the data skills and innovation ambitions of the sector as a whole. So to kick us off and to set the screen as well as the scene, I'm happy to welcome Tommy to take over. He'll take over, I'll mute myself and then hand over to Tommy. Thanks very much, Tommy. Over to you.
Thanks for that intro there, Al. That was great. So just to give you a sort of starting point, I'll give you an explanation of what SMIE do. We're a Creative Scotland funded membership organisation. We exist to represent and develop Scottish music scene and industry. We do this through workshops, research projects, networking, creating and pooling resources from external members. We also put together like the Scottish Album of the Year Award, which runs annually. It's seen as the national award for Scotland for music. One of the things that we do also is we represent at a public forum level. We gather research and we present it to industry bodies such as the Creative Industries Advisory Group, Skills Development Scotland, and the Scottish Government's Cross-Party Music Group. So we've got like quite a wide scope of what we do. Our overall aim is to help the business infrastructure for self-sustained Scottish music industry. We're trying to set that up. Currently, at the moment, we don't really have one, so we're looking to try and rebuild essentially. To give you a sort of starting point as well, going into this, is we'd like to talk about where we were at pre-COVID. The Scottish music industry had untold potential. We're heading in the right direction to have a self-sustained music industry. With the talent, just to give you a sort of representation of the talent, 293 albums were entered into this year's Scottish Album of the Year Award, and the diversity of genres was absolutely massive. The live music scene was world class, including venues such as the Barrowlands to Sneaky Pete's. This amazing live scene brought around a thriving, lucrative music tourism market. And just to put it into numbers for you, the music generated around £300 million towards the GDP each year, and about £4.5 100,000 full-time jobs. However, these numbers could be higher. Many musical creatives that we have are represented by managers, agents, publicists, record labels who are based elsewhere, mostly in London. And so like that dysphoria has a negative effect on what we could actually do as an industry. And we have the talent here on that side of the business that we could have a self-sustained industry. Just to give you an example of why we could be bigger, in 2017, the Scottish Government identified the creative industries and music in particular as a growth area. They've showed their support for that through funding, through funding, through backing for setting up organisations like ourselves and Creative Scotland. Some of the hurdles that we've faced in the last little while vary, and the first one is one that has faced every hurdle, every industry worldwide at the moment, and that's COVID. Our live scene has been the worst hit, and the problem with that is that provides the backbone to our industry and a devastating effect on the music industry in Scotland. Even with the £250 million funding that's been granted to creative industries in Scotland from the government this year on emergency funding, it still has a negative impact going forward. Addition to this, in January, Brexit's coming around. Love it or hate it, it's happening, and the music industry has to adapt to fit within that. Brexit brings unique issues to the music industry, especially for Scotland. For instance, how do we protect our world-class live scene, previously mentioned as the backbone of what we do, to still bring the best acts to the world to Scotland and continue to bring in that music tourism money? What have our touring bands and the carnies and visa issues they've faced and the copyright laws that have been dealt with at EU level for years? So there's lots of new issues they face head on. However, we still believe there's lots of potential for the music industry in Scotland. We can be self-sustained. That's why we came to you guys, and that's why we're happy and delighted to work with the Change Agent project and pose the question of how can the music industry in a post-COVID Scotland create and increase economic growth? So just before I hand you on to someone else, I'd like to give you some food for thought. For you that want to be part of this project, I'd like to ask you, would we, if we're starting back to build this industry again after these hurdles and after Brexit, do we build the foundations that we already have? Do we rebuild those around the live industry as we have for previous years? Or do we look at a new opportunity to start again and rebuild it in a much more productive way? So on that note, I'm going to hand you over to Dr. Martin Parker.
Okay, thanks a lot, Tommy. By the way, everyone, if you ever meet me again, you don't need to use the doctor. It was a long time ago, and you know, a lot of things have changed since then. So Martin will do, and you don't even need to keep the T. You can just call me Martin, and that's fine. Anyway, thanks for having me. And yeah, as Al said, I'm the head of music at the Reid School of Music at the moment. And so I guess one of the things that I can bring to the sort of multifaceted problem that you face is in particular kind of a dimension relating to music pedagogy and music learning in particular. I want to start with a little bit of hyperbole, which is this. Musicians are probably the most highly trained specialists on the planet. The reason I feel that we can confidently say that is not just because, you know, look, right? It's because since the age of 3, people have been learning music, you know, age of 3, 4, 5. If you've got a professional musician sitting on a stage playing music, they've been doing it their entire lives. Now, if you think, compare that to say a surgeon or a lawyer, they have not been doing it since their entire lives. They might have been arguing, they might have been digging around in the mud, but what they haven't been doing is that detailed focus work of learning a skill right deep down as their body's been developing and their brain has been growing. So I would like to argue that the musicians themselves are some of the most precious talent that we have on earth, the most highly skilled people, and therefore should be vaunted. And why don't we even argue for this? Should be paid. Their pay should reflect this level of skill and dedication and commitment that they've got. Now, you know, maybe talking to some people in the room who just sort of go, yeah, absolutely, here. Nathaniel's clapping his hands. That's great. But of course, we're in a real problem at the moment because all of that training, all of that skill, all of that dedication has really been shaken. And one of the, like, just to give you a sort of an example of a colleague I talked to quite a bit, who's a professional clarinet player, and he says that so many of his peers have stopped practicing. And you know, this thing of practice, which is a daily slog, you know, they're Olympians. A professional musician is someone who's got this physical prowess. They've stopped practicing because there's no adoration. You know, when a concert has got, and that doesn't mean that musicians are egotists or anything, but the whole kind of thing for all that work is the payoff of getting to get on stage and release all of that energy and all of that kind of will into a space. So there's a real important personal dimension to this. It's not just about the industry in general, but the human beings that are propelling it and inventing new things, which brings us to perhaps another kind of dimension that you'd want to explore in addressing this challenge is how do we keep people interested in music, and how do we keep music itself growing and developing and changing? Now, of course, with the kind of scorched earth that you get from a massive pandemic, from the C and the B word, there is a great opportunity to explore what we might do differently and how things might change. And really, this is an opportunity for everybody to just sort of have some imagination. But the call that's present here is how do we attend to the individual in building that challenge up? How do we involve the different multifaceted tribes and that are invested in all the different colors of music? How do we get their voices heard in the new platforms that are going to emerge and create? And I think that's a really significant question, because without these aspirational and inspirational individuals, you don't have a music scene at all. And without music teaching, you don't have a music scene at all. So another dimension to all of this is, how is music being taught in schools and how might it be changing? And you've got this really interesting dimension of the one-to-one model, where there's one teacher having a very close relationship with a student and doing this sort of feedback thing, and that works incredibly well. But we've also got these models now where we've got professional musicians teaching large classes on Zoom and on Skype. So there's another kind of dimension to it. How do you get the feedback back? Well, one way of getting the feedback back is to then have those individuals join into groups and playing in bands and little ensembles. I mean, it's a very complex ecosystem that needs a lot of attention, and it needs a lot of nurturing, because without that, you don't get the thing that you can sell to the big festival in New York or tour around the world. And we're in danger of losing both things at the moment. So I think that's a really important dimension. We need to continue to question, like, what a concert is and what music is and so on. And I'm going to leave Joss to deal with the dimensions of what a concert might be, because he's in a really good position as a venue and promoter there. But I think it's worth us thinking just a little bit, or worth you guys thinking and considering in this multidimensional space, what the futures for actual music might be. And I think if you want to really get under the hood of this project, again, you want to talk to musicians, you want to talk to experimental musicians, because even if you don't like their music, and I have to admit, I'm an experimental musician, and so you could talk to me even, and you might not like my music, but the thing that I think is beautiful about having an experimental scene is that it opens up the possibilities of what music can be. And the more experimentation that's going out on the periphery, it widens the surface, the canvas, which allows other things to be music, and for us to understand more about what music could possibly be in the future. And sort of implicated in all of that are these other new technologies. So what is music like on a mobile phone? What is music like on a Raspberry Pi? What is music like in a VR headset? All of these things are kind of interesting challenges that are going to add, they have economic dimensions, they have technical, physical dimensions. They're also, there's a sort of financial divide in making some of those things accessible and reachable by different audiences, which is another thing to consider. Oh dear, don't put links to the start. Yeah. And I guess a final like dimension to all of that is, in this sort of post-COVID universe, we've got a really interesting opportunity to teach more about music. So we started off about music pedagogy and how we teach things, but what if our kind of experience and connection with music is able to be deeper through the way artists are able to connect with their audiences and explain what it is they're doing and how they're doing it. And you'll see this if you go to, say, the Dunedin Consorts website, right? They had a concert series planned, it all had to disappear, and they've put it all online for free. And you'll notice in those presentations the conductor is there, right, talking to you right in the face, explaining why they're doing what they're doing and what's going on. And this is a learning opportunity, because music is a thing that just never stops being interesting. I know I'm terribly biased here, but you know, it really is. And that's the thing that means that there is such a valuable industry under our fingertips here that we do not want to lose. Perhaps I should stop there with this rabble rousing and hand over to Joss, if I may, but come back to me if you want to take me to task on anything I've said.
Okay, thanks. Interesting what you're saying. I mean, this is really the times, I think, for experimental music, but also for look into new dimensions on what a concert is or is not. Yes, educating new musicians, of course, is very important. That's what you have to keep going on. But if you want to make money of it, you have to be able to sell it and to bring it to an audience. What we as a venue, I guess nobody has been to Eindhoven before, so this is what our venue looks like. Gives you a slight impression using the old-fashioned paper sheets. But this is my venue. Has 2 halls, one of 300 people, or one of 400 people, sorry, and 1,200 people. And what we've been doing during 50 years is doing, well, just traditional concerts and festivals. And over the last years, it turned out that this is a very risky business. It's, of course, you see that this time at the times of COVID, there's nothing going on right now. There's no income. Nobody's getting paid. Not the musicians, not the technical people, not the venues. There's no money at all. But this already started a few years ago, and I think the first time I realized that was when this terroristic attack at Bataclan was going on, and the world tours were suddenly coming to a halt. And you saw for also 4 or 5 months there was nobody touring, there was no big bands coming in, and there was nobody making money. So we started at that time, we started thinking about, I don't want to be so vulnerable as an industry, because if something goes wrong or something is happening and the whole industry is coming to a halt and is not making any money, well, what's the future perspective then of an industry? So we started thinking about and posing questions on what could it be, what can we do? And what you see, what we all see, I think, is that there is so much innovation going on. I have just printed some sheets so to show you. There's so much innovation going on. The music industry is really turning around. Streaming has a big impact. Streaming is taking away money from artists that are underpaid. The only ones that really profit from streaming mostly are the big labels, that are under a lot of pressure to change because they are losing their market shares. And it's not only the magicians. They are looking into how can we use these new forms of technology, these innovations. You see lots of young magicians that are into do-it-yourself labeling, you could say. They start their own, they make their own video clips, they make their own songs, they put them on YouTube, not earning really any money, but there's a long tail after that they can earn some money. So what we were trying to do as a venue is posing these questions on what can these new technologies do or mean for a venue and for a live concert going on. So we looked into some examples, for example, using AR, but using AR could be a solution for promoting a band, but also if you look into 5G coming on, you'll find that you'll have AR glasses, well, looking something like Caroline is wearing or Tommy is wearing these glasses in the near future, and you can put on layers of AR additional to a concert, adding a completely different experience to the audience. But we also were looking into, we have a studio there you can film holograms in it. It's a 4D studio. And what you can do with that, for example, is also have a live concert on your table, on your kitchen table. I mean, we can project this hologram, or you can see it through AR, through your phone, and we can let people play. And you can also put it, of course, in VR experiences. And if you put it in VR, you can have some big data and AR as well, some big data behind it. We can make you a lot of analysis and look into other opportunities to make some money out of it. That's something I think Caroline will look into. So we have been experimenting with these things, but not making any money because there's no business model yet. I think that is the big question at the moment. There is so much going on. And we see lots of opportunities, but really making money with it, it's a different kind. You were telling about this streaming also, it was for free. Yeah, we think that everything that is being streamed is for free. If you go to YouTube, you see so many movies or clips or whatever going on, and it's all for free. And that has to be a mind change, I guess, on, it's not longer for free. People have to earn some money on that. So what happened when COVID started, let's take it a bit further, is of course there were no concerts going on. So what we could do, what we were able to do, because we were already looking into these new developments, is starting streaming for free, of course, with donations. But in the pop music sector, the donations are not that high. I see differences with jazz music, for example. So we started, our hall was empty, so we just took out the old equipment and we put in cameras and we started streaming. What we've done so far is we've done like 150, this says 140, but it's an old slide, 150 live concerts streamed from our hall. And that's a brilliant experience, but some of these concerts that we were streaming had only maybe like 30 people watching, and at the highest we had 3,000 people watching. So there's how to handle that, how to promote that, how to also make some money out of that, because right now it's only about donations, and donations vary from, let's say, 30 euros donated to 2,000 euros, and still 2,000 euros for an artist that's really, well, bigger, some kind of bigger artist is nothing. So what we're looking into now is how can we make some money in this streaming business? We don't have the answers, but we're looking into streaming live concerts from different venues. So we could invite venues from Scotland, from Berlin, from Tokyo, wherever, and join in on a platform and have let's say a Netflix of live music streaming, creating. We could do that. You could also, of course, stream directly. We've seen some examples. This is Paul McCartney into VR. Well, we're looking into that as well. One thing with high potential could be streaming in games. In games that are on live played. You see, I think 2 weeks ago, there was, I don't remember the names of all the DJs, I'm sorry. There was a DJ streaming in one of the games, and there were 27 million people worldwide watching that. And there are some opportunities to create a business model there as well. Well, we have video on demand. You can have, of course, you can put everywhere you can put in dating, also with streaming. So you're creating, and I think that's something, we don't have the answers for that, but that's something worthwhile looking into. It's creating a streaming event, but it's also looking at the other end, at the people sitting at home, watching a stream, a live concert, that's going into a different concert. And what is it like to sit in your sofa and watch a live concert? I mean, well, I'm an older guy, so I think, well, I want to be in the venue. I want to see and I want to smell the sweat of all my fellow people with me, and I don't mind having some beer poured over me because it's thrown at the artists. I mean, that all comes to the total experience that you want. But there are some people growing up right now, the young people, maybe people like you, who would say, well, I'm not going to travel 2 hours to a venue and stand along some sweaty audience with 2,000 people getting beer poured over myself. I'll keep it on my couch. I may have my potatoes, my chips, my crisps with me, my own beer. Why would I go there? And then you want to interact, but we don't have these possibilities, these opportunities to interact yet. We don't know that. So I would very much, I think that's the challenge right now that we have. There's a challenge in reinventing not only concerts, but in reinventing this music industry. And that's really, really brilliant times, I think, to look into these questions. I don't have the answers. I have a lot of questions I would like to have the answers to, but I believe in this, and that's the way I'm leading my venue. It's a bumpy road, I must say. Trying to find some money to do these experiments, but we're getting something done. Okay, thanks. I go to Caroline, I guess, or not? Yeah?
Yeah, so thanks for that, Jos, and Martin and Tommy, keeping it real, all three of you. So let me just do a little summation before I take you forward a bit. So all you lovely people who are going to take on this challenge, I don't know how well you know how the music industry works. So let me tell you a little bit. So Tommy wants to ask the question, can we rebuild whatever this is? Making the music, making money from the music, enjoying the music, can we change this model? So the current economic model is musicians, well, this varies of course, musicians get paid if they perform. And so they put in loads of tours because they can make money from those performances. They make money from their music that gets played on the radio or whatever other media. They get royalties per track, per play for that. If you're in a pub or a disco, that track is being played, they take out a phonographic license, they list what they've played, they tell you how many times they've played it. That goes to the PRS distributes the money to the individual. If you've written an album 20 years ago that's doing quite well, that's given you a backbone as a musician of income. Lovely stuff. Now, what's happened over a period of time, there's brands have gotten involved, so musicians are working with brands, they're working in games, as Jos has said. They've also got their stuff on films, on soundtracks, on animations, and there's lots of syncing going on, and that's also great, and that brings in revenue. There's compositional commissions, and that's maybe a little bit more lucrative as well, and you might negotiate a back end on the play for that too. I'm just giving you an idea of how the money flows. So a typical band might make a wee bit of money from their album, they'll put it out there, they'll try to get a fan base, they'll get a big enough fan base hopefully to do a tour, and the tour's actually where the big money is, and then they'll sell merchandise. Now there's more profit on the merchandise than there is on the CD. Typical CD, back in the old days before you guys were doing digital downloads, say it was a tenner, like Destiny's Child, I mean they got 50 pence from a CD, just to give you an idea. They went bankrupt before they made it. That's what we're talking about. Jamiroquai went to #1, he had no money. This is how the model works. Everything gets paid except the artists. Artists get paid last. So I just want you to understand this model that is not great. At the moment, the UK government is reviewing how musicians are paid. They're looking at digital streaming now because that's happened to our sector. And Spotify, as a consumer, you might be all thinking this is great, $9.99 a month or free if you want. And, you know, fine, I'm enjoying myself. But the musician's getting 0.03p, if that. So what are we doing? What are we doing to the very musicians we love and regard? Are we helping them to survive and make more music? So Mick Jagger said in a recent interview that he thought making money from music might be a bell curve blip from Charlie Christian in 1926 to now. And he sees this happening. He says, what are we going to do? We're going to go back to patronage, where you pay someone to play music for you in your home? Where are we going with this? So just to let you know, that's the economic model. The economic model is up for scrutiny. What Jos is talking about, what Martin's talking about, is disrupting the model to make it better. And that's what Tommy wants your brains to try and achieve. So what else is going on? Well, Martin is making music on his laptop. Awesome. And now AI is coming along as a tool to make music. So can we harness that tool and make music with AI? Or are we scared that the bots are going to take over and we're going to lose all our humanity, including making music? Then there's AI and blockchain at the back of the model. Remember I said that there's a track and people get paid a royalty. If you're in a band, you have to agree who's made that track. And there's loads of arguments about that. Once you've sorted out who owns what, the PRS pays you that percentage of your split. Blockchain is going to put that contract in the track. in the MP3. So automatic. It's agreed, it gets paid. So that's going to revolutionize the model. Now, as they say, money can go up as well as down. So if it's more accurate, you might get less. However, you might get more, especially if you're getting paid through pubs and clubs playing your track, because the phonographic license might actually track it better. If it's getting digitally played, it's getting digitally recorded, it's getting digitally paid. If we move on to someone like Chagall, which Jos flashed up, Chagall, and I've sent the link, is this dancer singer who is writing her own music on computer and with live musicians. And she is triggering the MIDI live with Mimu gloves by Imogen Heap. And she's triggering them with body sensors as a dancer. She's been filmed in, that's her there. She's been filmed in Jos's 360 4K studio with her Natasha, Dutch Rose Media, to create an avatar or Chagall-atar. She triggers that on stage as well. And it's like fire and lights. And she's triggering that with a camera, motion graphic sensor camera. So this is, she's an extension of her performance is happening through all of this technology. Is that the future of music? The great thing about Chagall is that she's also looking into this payment model as well. So Delic Network in Scotland and Copyright Delta in Holland are talking about how you can do music rights management online using blockchain, and then it pings to the royalty license and goes straight into your bank account. Now, so Chagall did a broadcast in Jos's studio. She has an account with Delic, she has an account with Copyright Delta. The broadcast is registered in our music rights management software, goes to Copyright Delta, gets paid. That is disrupting the model, because usually in the PRS it takes 3, 6, 9 months to sort out who's getting paid what. So that's just part of the economic model. Then there's talking about AR and VR and live streaming music in VR for access, for geographical reach, for being able to play to the world. People with disabilities and other reasons why they can't travel can totally enjoy a whole raft of music from all over the world. How awesome is that? And taking that slightly further, Drake Music and Stromatolite, Michaela Magus, are working with people with locked-in syndrome and disabilities to help them to make music, no matter what it is that they can move, if it's just their eyes or one finger, one digit. And it's incredible work, and I'll post some links on that in a moment so you can look at that too. If that technology is driving that making music, can we adopt that as a method generally? Is there a way that we can all be making music? And then there's the other thing around musicians playing in different countries and coming together through the instantaneousness of 5G to play live no matter what country you're in. So there's ways that the industry has been revolutionized by the tech inside the business model, but also inside the creativity, the reach, the accessibility, and the performance. And so I just wanted to leave you with that kind of array to think about when you're taking on this challenge that Tommy has set.
Okay, thank you so much, Caroline, Jos, Martin, and Tommy. Yeah, I mean, this is I'm going to say, could we just unmute so that we can actually audibly clap the audience, which is kind of building on one of Martin's points of like the no interaction element. So yeah, please, yeah, I'm seeing a few of you said this is. Thank you very much. It's all very well having the icons, but yeah, this is fascinating. So a couple of points that I'm going to cover over before I can like throw out to questions. Yeah, we had Tommy kind of introduce, set the scene, talk about the potential of Scotland and I also asked the question, why is so much London centric? Does it have to be? Do we rebuild what we had, or do we create something new? That was the kind of like the setting the scene. Mine spoke about music pedagogy, the complex ecosystem of what we currently have, and how music is taught and how musicians are professional, highly skilled, but now they're performing in a world that lacks that personal interaction. So how do we keep music developing and growing? What's it going to look like in the future? And how can we shape that? And then we went to Jos, who kind of started with an amazing question: what is a concert? And what is a concert? How can you sell it? Using AR technologies, so you can have a gig in your front room or your kitchen, and then kind of moving on. So kind of what is free? Yeah, it's free, but how do we monetize it for venues? How do we monetize it for people wider than just outside of the major companies that are dominating and making all the money and keeping the wealth? He was talking about the fact that his Effenaar's kind of streamed 150 events. It's ranged from 30 to 3,000 viewers. Could you create the Netflix of live music, and how would the wealth that generated be distributed fairly and equitably across the industry and to performers? And then we finished with Caroline talking about how the current reiterating the current economic model doesn't work, how the wealth is concentrated, the fact that performers don't get paid proportionately. Music rights management is on the brink of potential change using data and digital techniques. And how could AR and VR, the potential that they have the impact and the reach to really change the industry itself, alongside tech and performance. So with all of that, we have literally had a whistle-stop tour and not even scratched the surface of so many other elements. But thank you so much to the speakers. I think it's been brilliantly set up for the challenge. Now I wanted to throw the conversation out to kind of participants and students that have signed up this afternoon. And to kind of invite you, do you have any questions that you'd like to either ask any of the panel or kind of raise and share a comment? I know that some of you are yourselves performers and may well have been impacted over the last few months. So I'm throwing the space open there. So feel free to either type in the chat bar or raise an icon and I can come to you. So it feels like we might have, you guys are a bit shy. Hopefully, when you've joined in on the program a little while, it will increase your confidence to be able to ask questions. These guys really want to hear your questions because they're super interested in what you kind of think about it and where it's the direction we're going at the moment. But I'm just going to kind of pass over to Tommy and kind of this is the first time you've heard everyone speaking. What's your gut reactions to what we've just heard?
My gut reaction right away is even for someone who's working within the industry and dealing with the industry, how inspired I can be by just listening to my fellow panelists there. I'd really like to highlight what Caroline used in her speech there about disrupting the industry. I think that's a great way of describing what we're looking from you guys is that sort of disruption, the idea of bringing something new to the fore. Having a hive mind from University of Edinburgh is a massive bonus to us. It's something we wouldn't usually tap into. That's why we're really grateful to be part of this project. But I think if we're going to look forward to do something decent after COVID and after Brexit, it's going to be something new. It's going to be a new sense of where to find revenue streams from, where to support the industry, and that comes through disruption. So I'm very grateful to hear from that. As Alex said, I would love to hear some more questions, some more details of what comes from people who are listening who are not one of the panelists. So any questions we'd be grateful for. So please do come forward.
Well, fab. Well, while you've been saying that, actually, Tommy, Odara has sent in a question. So we know Odara, and this question is coming from Wales. So the question to the panel is, do you think the current business model, Spotify and other streaming services, is unsustainable right now? It seems to contrast with what another speaker said about how great it is that YouTube and comparable services offer free content. So do we have a volunteer from the panel so we'll go to Martin and then he'll pass to Caroline.
To say one of the things that's wonderful about a platform like YouTube and being able to stream concerts is that you can stream concerts and other information. So one of that's great. And what we want as a society is for information and knowledge to be free. We want our education to be free. Something to be continually working for is a free exchange of knowledge. That's one thing, but we cannot have people not paid for their work. And I know that what the you know, the big labels are doing is putting pressure on Spotify to put their prices up, because they're not making enough money from having their stuff on those platforms. So it looks to me like a very brittle situation with those kinds of platforms there, and it's a space to watch, because if one of those things snap, what's going to come up in its wake? We need to be ready perhaps for that moment. That could be a thing for people to think about.
So to follow up on that then, these models sadly work on advertising. So I heard a Spotify speaker last year, I think it was last year, I'm losing track of time during this COVID lockdown, said that thank you for those people who are not subscribers, because you're the ones that keep the advertising model alive. So if you're doing the free Spotify, you're getting your 30 seconds of adverts for 30 minutes of jazz or whatever you're into. And that's their model. And then they convert you to the $9.99 a month. If they have enough conversions, yes, there might be a sustainable model there, Odara. So maybe, but that conversion is the key to their model. Not paying artists, I would suggest, is not the key to them being sustainable. And as you've seen, Madonna and others thinking about other platforms to rival Spotify in rebellion, if you like, to the model. And so I think a fairer exchange might make a more sustainable model. And the link to brands and monetization of digital platforms, I mean, I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying that it seems to be the only way to go is advertising. We've got to find another way of doing this.
That's great. Before we come to Jos, actually, I'm just going to throw to Hannah, who has a question for the panel.
Hi, I was just wondering kind of what timescale would the restructuring and rebuilding of the industry take, and would it be adapted primarily in light of events like COVID and Brexit, or would there be ways in which the kind of old aspects of the industry could be incorporated?
That's an amazing question. Which one from the panel would like to take that? It's huge. Jos, over to you.
Yeah, maybe first a little bit on the last item. The money that is earned by Spotify for a major part is going to the big labels because there are shareholders in it. So the part that's really going to artists is very well, it's not that much. And with Spotify, and that's a very tricky thing. There is also I think there's billions of on the bank accounts of Spotify of rights composition payments that they cannot pay because it's not clear who the composer is. So there is another problem lying behind that. You've got the musician that have rights and you have the composers that got rights. And according to American law, they're not able to pay out unless 100% of the rights are clear. So if you don't know who's the composer, they cannot pay. So there is money sitting there, not going to the artists. So that's one thing. I think that it's going to take quite a while to really change the system. I think that you see all the major labels at this point looking into different models, and I think and hope that the power of the do-it-yourself artists and also the major artists that are really tired of getting fucked by the major labels see what Ed Sheeran is doing, Madonna was mentioned, there are more of them. They pass the major labels. I know that Ed Sheeran, for example, has a financial team that spends every year 3 weeks at the headquarters of Warner Music in London to check every amounts of listeners that are listed by Spotify's of the world, just to make sure that they get the money that they really are entitled to. And that's really, really difficult. So you see on one hand, the major artists trying to pass and to create their own label, you could say, to have to own their own stuff. And you see on the other hand, the young starting artists that are doing everything themselves. So there's pressure from two sides, but the power of major labels and the music industry in total is so enormous that it's going to take some time. And what I see in the major labels, and this is my private opinion, I also see that within the major labels, the people being on power there are people like me. They're in their 50s, and they're thinking, okay, well, it's another 5 or 10 years till my pension. Why should I change? So they just sit there and, okay, I know I'm making generalizations, but they just sit there and they wait. Is that an answer?
That's great, thank you.
In terms of timescale for change, as a reflection, the industry was radically changed when Napster came along. And what Jos is describing is documented in a book called The Self-Destruction of the Music Industry, where they actually said they were asleep at the wheel. The label people that Jos is describing, they said they were asleep at the wheel, they had their model, were happy as Larry, and along came Napster and upended their world. That happened pretty fast after that. So I think to the questioner, it was Hannah, yeah, maybe it depends how big the disruption is, how fast that could happen. And I think a final thought from me is just thinking about you guys. You're obviously younger than us. Sorry, Tommy and Martin, but I'm assuming everybody on the call is younger than us. Then this is your music industry. Yeah, this is your future. When we think about our lives, yeah, our formative years, we will tell you when we bought The Clash in 1979 or when we bought Human League in 1981 or whatever, right? We can tell you what song we got married to, all that stuff. All our memories, the soundtrack of our life is our era. The same is happening to you right now. But what will your music industry look like in 10 years' time? Yeah, so this is your music industry. You should not be worried about us. You should be thinking, what is fair to us? If I was a musician, what would be fair to me now at 20 years old? So feel free to take a blank sheet of paper and build it from the grassroots up and put it forward. Why not? Anything can happen.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Caroline and Jos. Hannah, fantastic question. Odara actually has a question as well. So I'll go to Odara. Are you okay to show your screen and ask the question?
Yeah, I'll just share my mic for now, if that's okay, because my internet might dip otherwise. Yeah, I thought it would be better to ask it instead of type because it's quite long. But VR is something that game developers are exploring right now for, making the next of a game series, in VR instead of just normal on like a PC or on a console. And obviously VR is quite expensive. And the hardware needed to play VR games is quite a lot to get together, and sometimes, I mean, less so now than a year or two ago, but you needed a whole spare room where you can attach all the things needed for a HTC Vive for it to actually be functional. It's not just a big computer you'd need, it's also, a room in some cases. And I understand how game developers can expect gaming enthusiasts who already have lots of expensive equipment to play these games to make that extra step and buy all the equipment needed for a VR game. But people who enjoy going to concerts and stuff don't necessarily have those same interests, and it might be considered a lot to ask, someone who likes going to concerts, to also, use all this new, quite expensive and arguably inaccessible technology. So I was just wondering, do you think that VR concerts is something that will be popular now, within the next 2 to 3 years, or when VR is generally more accessible? And because there was a time when not everyone had a really big computer, and then it becomes normal to have computers, and you have a pretty decent computer just in your phone. And VR it'll take time for VR to get to that level of accessibility. So I'm just wondering, when do you think VR concerts will be popular?
We were thinking about disrupting that model as well, that if you bought a digital ticket for a live stream of a concert, that we would also hire or send you a Google Cardboard or whatever, so that you're actually being equipped, if you like, for that engagement in VR. So there's other ways to think about how you might enjoy it. You're right, though, it may be that it's just you want the live stream and the VR live stream simultaneously for those who have that equipment. But we were wondering about whether we could actually do something in between. Others might have more to say on that than me.
Let's go, Martin, then Jos.
Other way around. Jos was first, actually.
Okay. I think that one of the aspects, I think, of going to a concert is meeting other people and connecting with other people. And I think that still is a problem with VR. That's something that's going to be solved with I don't know, it's a software thing to solve. And I think that when that's solved, then you're able to sit on your own couch and see your friend on his couch or her couch and watch together. I think that will be a major improvement or a major stimulus for VR. Yeah, I think that it will come there, but VR has been a promise for almost 20 years already, and technology like computing has been a problem so far, and that's been solved. And now I think with 5G also the connecting thing will be solved. You don't need computers anymore, really good computers to have a headset on. So I think then the social thing, the connecting thing, will be an important part.
Similar point to Jos's there, that you wouldn't buy that technology just for music, but if that technology was part of your learning infrastructure and your social infrastructure and your shopping infrastructure, and you can also encounter music through it, then that's when you have a kind of nexus of possibility to where it's not an impossible vision. But I mean, there's another dimension to all of this which we haven't talked about, but it's there, lurking in the background, is the slightly risky, dangerous side of other conglomerates, not the ones that are the big music industry figures and so on, but those other monsters, like I call them monsters just for the hype, but you know, those data farmers like Facebook and Amazon and so on, that are kind of watching everything that we do and gathering information on all of our kind of activities and our preferences. And if we embrace a music industry that's reliant, its future is reliant on those technologies, it's also going to be reliant on those data giants, quite possibly anything that's going through a server and so on. And so what also has to be updated is society's attitude to data and its understanding of data from a consumer and so there are things at stake as we rush into the next phase that we also need to be mindful of. I think I don't want to be too, you know, sort of scary and scaremongery, but that is a factor that is reshaping how we understand our lives. So it's bigger than music.
That is a thank you, Martin. That's a fantastic place to, I think, kind of like bring us to the end naturally, as we come to the end of the allotted time. And I think that really does that kind of, if we started this session by setting the scene with Tommy about the scale, and then Martin there kind of like really finishing off with the opportunities and kind of like what is at stake for the future as well. So I'm just going to say another thank you so much to all of the panelists for giving up their time this lunchtime, and all of you future change agents for joining in with us this afternoon and helping to set the conversation and setting the kind of like the direction that we think we might be going. I will be communicating out to you guys about when the challenge is live and when you can apply. And because you came along today, I'll make sure keep an eye on you, that if this is your first preference, that you get to take the program on this subject in February to April. But yeah, once again, thank you so much for coming this afternoon. I will make sure that this recording is available on our YouTube channel once it's downloaded. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a great rest of the day, and see you all again in the future. A really big conversation. Thanks, everyone.
Yes, thanks for the opportunity to chat with everyone, and hopefully we've given you all food for thought.